unseen. So will she commit to making being an unpaid carer a protected characteristic under the Equality Act, as Carers UK have called for?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not able to give that commitment, but I do look forward to joining her and others at the reception this afternoon with Carers UK, because there are very many important issues on how we can support unpaid carers.
Helen Hayes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The cost of a full-time nursery place for children under 2 has risen by 16% in the past 5 years. And for the first time in decades, the number of women leaving the workforce has increased. Does the Minister for Women and Equalities think that this government's failed approach to childcare, which is pricing some women out of work and others out of parenthood, is remotely acceptable? And what recommendations is she making to the Treasury and the Department for Education to sort this problem?
Well, Mr. Speaker, we're absolutely determined to bring down the cost of childcare, to fix the regulations that make the cost so high, and we'll be bringing forward proposals very shortly.
Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, this government promised that a comprehensive women's health strategy would be published last year, but we are still waiting, and meanwhile, waiting lists continue to soar. So, Secretary of State, given that waiting lists for women waiting for gynecological services is now in excess of 570,000, a 60% increase on pre-pandemic levels, isn't it time that this government stops trying to protect constantly the job of a lame-duck Prime Minister and actually gets on with resolving the day-to-day issues affecting women in our country?
Minister.
As I said in answer to many questions this morning, the Women's Health Strategy will be published shortly. We had over 100,000 responses. We published our vision document in December, and we will be publishing the Women's Health Strategy in the coming weeks.
Before we come to Prime Minister's questions, I would like to point out that the British Sign Language interpretation of proceedings is available to watch on Parliament Live TV. We now start with questions to Prime Minister Dame Angela Riedel.
Question number 1.
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, this week is Carers Week, and I'm sure the whole House will want to join me in thanking the millions of carers across the UK for all they do to support their loved ones. We've seen the vital role carers have played in our communities during the pandemic, and we all owe them a debt of gratitude. Through our reforms on adult social care, this government is committed to continuing to support carers. And Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Dame Angela Riedel.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. May I associate myself with the Prime Minister's remarks about the importance of carers in our country. This week's events, Mr. Speaker, have demonstrated just how loathed this Prime Minister is. Yeah. And that's only in his own party. So, as his administration is too distracted by its internal divisions to deal with the challenges we face, can the Prime Minister explain if 148 of his own backbenchers don't trust him, why on earth should the country?
Prime Minister.
I thank the Right Honourable Lady very much for her question, and I can assure her that in a long political career so far, I have, of course, picked up, barely begun, I have, of course, picked up political opponents all over the place. And that is because this government has done some very big and very remarkable things which they did not necessarily approve of. And what I want her to know is that absolutely nothing and no one, least of all her, is going to stop us with getting on for delivering for the British people.
Andrew Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The whole House will unite behind the Prime Minister. on his determination to hold Ukrainian war criminals to account. But is he aware that there are 5 alleged Rwandan war crimes perpetrators living freely in the UK who have been doing so now for 16 years and have neither been extradited nor put before the British courts under our existing laws? As he prepares to go down to the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Rwanda, will he look carefully at this issue because it is bound to be raised with him? And will he reassure the House and the Rwandan government he takes these matters extremely seriously, and what has so far been justice massively delayed for 16 years will not be grotesquely denied?
Prime Minister.
I thank my right honourable friend for his question, and he raises an issue on which the UK has campaigned for a long time, and no country is more committed than we are to bringing war criminals to justice. I know that my right honourable friend, the Deputy Prime Minister, has raised the subject recently with the International Criminal Court. However, as he knows, and I will certainly, of course, study the case and take it up as appropriately, it is the subject of an ongoing investigation. It would not be appropriate for me to comment on it further.
We now come to the Leader of the Opposition, Keir Starmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I couldn't make out whether that introductory noise was cheers or boos. The trouble is, I don't know whether it's directed at me or him. I joined the Prime Minister in his comments about carers. Why did his Culture Secretary, I think hiding along the bench, say that successive Conservative governments left our health service wanting and inadequate when the pandemic hit?
Mr. Speaker, everybody knows that when the pandemic hit, it was an entirely novel virus for which the whole world was unprepared. Nobody at that stage, nobody knew how to test for it. Nobody knew what the right quarantine rules should be, Mr. Speaker. But as it happened, the UK government and our amazing NHS produced, not only approved the first vaccine anywhere in the world. We were the first to get it into anybody's arms, Mr. Speaker, and we had the fastest rollout anywhere in Europe, none of which would have been possible if we'd listened to him.
I think the Prime Minister just agreed with the Culture Secretary. Perhaps she said it. They didn't deny it. Perhaps she said it because it's true.
Yeah, exactly.
It starts with GPs. People were unhappy with the service they were getting before the pandemic. Not enough GPs. Too hard to get an appointment. That's why he promised 6,000 new GPs. But his health secretary admits he won't keep that promise. Despite the hard work of doctors, people can't see a GP in person. They're unhappier than ever with GP services. If GP provision was wanting and inadequate before the pandemic, what is it now?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm afraid he's simply wrong, because he's wrong about what we're doing. And of course, we've got to clear the COVID backlogs, and everybody understands that. Everybody understands the pressure that the NHS is under. But they are responding magnificently, and I can tell him that thanks to the investments that this government has put in, we now have 4,300 more doctors. We have record numbers. We have record numbers in training. To the best of my, we have 11,800 more nurses this year than last year, Mr. Speaker, and 72,000 in training, and that is because of the investment that we put in, which was opposed by the party opposite. And the only reason we were able to make that investment, Mr. Speaker, is because we have a strong and robust economy, thanks to the decisions we took.
Mr. Speaker, of course he talks big, but I've got a letter here to the Prime Minister from the honourable member from Hereford in South Herefordshire. He said, this is you, Prime Minister, under you, the government seems to lack a sense of mission. It has a large majority, but no long-term plan. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's Big Plan Act is so tired that even once loyal MPs don't believe him. And it's not just waiting for a GP, it's waiting for all NHS treatment. Take cancer. For over a decade, waiting times for cancer care have been going up. His solution was supposed to be diagnostic hubs. The Health Secretary has been on a victory lap this week. But here's the rub, Prime Minister. Since they were opened last year, 135,000 extra people are now waiting for scans and tests. Can he think of a better way to describe soaring cancer waiting lists than wanting and inadequate?
Mr. Speaker, it is entirely right after the pandemic that people are now coming forward to get their cancer tests, and we have actively encouraged that, and that is the right thing for people to do. But as a result of the community diagnostic hubs that we are bringing in, 100 of them across the country, Mr. Speaker, we are able to cut the times for cancer diagnosis, help people to get their scans, their tests faster, and above all, we can do that, Mr. Speaker, because we're hiring more radiographers, we're hiring more nurses, we're hiring more professionals in our NHS because of the investments that we made, which, as I say, the party of Bevan tragically opposed.
Mr. Speaker, the problem is the cancer rates have been going up for 10 years, and they're even higher now. So blaming the pandemic just won't wash. Perhaps the Culture Secretary was talking about the state of NHS buildings. Before the pandemic, the NAO said they were a risk to patients. The government's response, paint jobs and fix-ups, pretending that's the same as building new hospitals. The Treasurer and the Cabinet Office apparently don't think that the refurbs are even going to be delivered. Take University Hospital North Tees. The ceiling is falling in, the roof leaks, and staff have to hose down the pipes to stop them freezing over. Failure to fix wanting and inadequate NHS buildings is putting patients at risk, isn't it, Prime Minister?
Mr. Speaker, this line of criticism is satirical, coming from a Labour government, attacking our hospital building programme, Mr. Speaker, where they were the authors of the PFI scheme that bankrupted so many hospitals. Mr. Speaker, what we're doing instead is building 48 new hospitals. Yes, we are. Thanks to the biggest capital investment programme in the history of the NHS. From memory, we put £33 billion as soon as we came in, then another 92 to cope with the pandemic, plus another 39 billion in the health and care levy. They opposed that funding. They opposed the health and care levy. They don't have a leg to stand on. We're building the foundations of our NHS's, our health services future, and they should support it.
Can I just say to both of you, need to calm down, and there's two over here as well. The four of you could have a very nice cup of tea if you wish. Keir Starmer.
Oh dear. Prime Minister. Dear. Pretending. Mr. Speaker. Pretending no rules for Prime Minister, he chunters on. Pretending no rules were broken didn't work. Pretending the economy is booming didn't work. And pretending to build 40 new hospitals won't work either. They want him to change, but he can't. As always with this Prime Minister, when he's falling short, he just changes the rules and lowers the bar. In March, he proposed changing the NHS contract. He wants to double the length of time patients can be made to wait for surgery, from 1 year to 2 years. On top of that, he scrapped zero tolerance of 12-hour waits at A&E. 24 hours at A&E used to be a TV programme. Now it's his policy. Well, it's Health Week. And he's telling all of them.
Order. Mr. Cleverly, we've got a tea party gathering. I'm sure you don't want to be part of it. I will hear the question. The problem is, so do our constituents. I wonder if I were you, and I think one or two of you might be going early. What I would say is, look, I need to hear the question in the same way I expect to hear the answer. So please, Keir Starmer.
Mr. Speaker, I bet they wish they were this organised on Monday. Well, Mr. Speaker, it's Health Week, and he's telling them he's going to turn over a new leaf. So why doesn't he start by scrapping his plans to greenlight wanting and inadequate NHS standards?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, look, I've got to tell you, I just think that this line of attack is not working, Mr. Speaker. But it's not working. It's not working because they refuse to approve.
Once again, I think the two of you need to calm down. So please, we don't want to see an empty front bench, Prime Minister.
Look, we've not only raised the standards in the NHS, we're not only reducing waiting times for those who've had to wait the longest, Mr. Speaker, but what we're doing more fundamentally is doing what the people of this country can see is simple common sense, and that is using our economic strength to invest in doctors and nurses and get people on the wards, get people, giving people their scans and their screens and their tests in a more timely manner and getting and taking our NHS forward. We are on target, Mr. Speaker, thanks to this government, to recruit 50,000 more nurses. Thanks to the investments, I'm just going to repeat this because he doesn't seem to have heard it so far. Thanks to the investments that party opposed. Perhaps he can now explain why they opposed them.
Keir Starmer.
Mr. Speaker, raising taxes because you failed to grow the economy isn't a plan for the NHS. And everyone sitting behind him knows it. Members of his cabinet admit that Conservatives left our health system wanting and inadequate when the pandemic hit. He's been in power for 3 years. And things are getting worse, not better. Fewer GPs, more waits for cancer tests, buildings still crumbling, and he's changing the rules to cover up his failure. And there is a real human pain as a result. Today, I spoke to Hamza Semakula. Hamza is 20, and he plays semi-professional football for Hendon. He tore his ACL earlier this year. Because of the 2-year wait for surgery, he had to crowdfund for a private operation. I also spoke to Akshay Patel. Last year, his mother woke up unable to breathe. Akshay called 999 6 times. In his last call, he said, "I rang an hour ago for an ambulance as she had difficulty breathing. And now she's dead." Even he must admit that Akshay, Bina and Hamza deserve better than a wanting and inadequate government utterly unable to improve our NHS.
Mr. Speaker, I think everybody in the House has sympathy with Akshay and the other constituents and their families and the other constituents that he mentions, Mr. Speaker, and I share their feelings. But when you look at what this government is doing, the massive, and I must say this to him, we are making colossal investments in our NHS. We are cutting waiting times, we're raising standards, we're paying nurses more, we're supporting our fantastic NHS. And by the way, he continually came to this, I don't have to remind him of this, and said that we had the worst COVID record in Europe. Turned out to be completely untrue. He still hasn't retracted it. We're doing it, Mr. Speaker. We can make those investments because of the strength of the UK economy, because of the fiscal firepower that we have to deploy. We have the lowest unemployment now since 1974, and we are going to continue to grow our economy for the long term. He asked about the mission of this government, Mr. Speaker. It is to unite and level up across our whole country, to unleash the potential of our entire country. The biggest tutoring program in history for young people, raising literacy and numeracy standards for 11-year-olds from 65% adequacy to 90%. That is the highest objective I think a government could achieve. Expanding home ownership for millions of people, as my right honourable friend for Duluth and I will do, for millions of people who currently don't have it. Cutting the costs of business to make this the enterprise centre of Europe. That is our vision, creating high-wage, high-skilled jobs for this country. And as for jobs, I'm going to get on with mine, and I hope he gets on with his.
But I didn't know you were so popular. Come on.
Well, we love all of them. Changing the subject completely, in North East Hertfordshire, we're very concerned about sewage overflows into our precious chalk stream. And this is damaging to the flora and fauna and also restricts the use of these precious streams for leisure. The Environment Bill included some important measures last year, and I welcome the fact that the government has consulted on its reduction plan for storm overflows. But when would we expect to see some meaningful improvements and some real reductions in the amount of sewage going into our rivers?
Yeah, well, I thank you very much, and I share his concern. I can tell him our sewage plan is the biggest investment on this by any government. We made it clear that the water companies must do more, Mr. Speaker, and actually we already are seeing improvements, but the regulator is ensuring that the water companies do more to deliver on their obligations. We will not hesitate to take further action as needed.
We now come to the leader of the SNP, Ian Blackford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I associate myself with the remarks of the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition in supporting our carers? Mr. Speaker, week after week, I've called on this Prime Minister to resign. I've been met with a wall of noise from the Tory benches. I thought they were trying to shout me down, but all this time, Mr. Speaker, it turns out that 41% of them have been cheering me on. Because, Mr. Speaker, let's be clear, at least the numbers don't lie. 41% of his own MPs have no confidence in him. 66 of MPs across the House don't support him, and 97% of Scottish MPs want the Minister for the Union shown the door. We now have a lame duck Prime Minister presiding over a divided party in a disunited kingdom. So how does the Prime Minister expect to continue when even unionist leaders in Scotland won't back him?
Prime Minister.
I want to thank the right honourable gentleman for his characteristic warm words. And actually, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that the biggest and most powerful and effective advocate of the United Kingdom over the last time that I've been in has been that man there. I don't know how long he's going to last here as leader of the SNP, long may he rest in place, Mr. Speaker. He is the Araldite that's keeping our kingdom together. I thank him for what he's doing.
Blackford.
Well, I can say to the Prime Minister, I can say to the Prime Minister that I'll be standing shoulder to shoulder with our First Minister as we take our country to independence. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is acting like Monty Python's Black Knight, running around declaring it's just a flesh wound. And no amount of delusion and denial will save the Prime Minister from the truth. This story won't go away until he goes away. For once in his life, he needs to wake up to reality. Prime Minister, it's over. It's done. The Prime Minister has no options left, but Scotland does. Scotland has the choice of an independent future. Because it's not just the Prime Minister that we have zero confidence in. It's the broken Westminster system that puts a man like him in power. Can he tell us, can the Prime Minister tell us how it is democratic that Scotland is stuck with a Prime Minister we don't trust, a Conservative Party we don't support, and Tory governments we haven't voted for since 1955?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we had a referendum, as I've told the House before, in 2014. I think he should respect the mandate of the people. And he keeps saying that he wants his independence for his country. Our country is independent, Mr. Speaker. Our country is independent. Then he tried 48 times to reverse it to the opposition. And the only way that independence would ever be reversed is if we had the disaster, Mr. Speaker, of a Labour SNP coalition to take us back into the EU.
Esther McVey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Earlier this week, the Prime Minister said, you cannot spend your way out of inflation, you cannot tax your way into growth. We will cut the cost of government. Here, I completely agree. So when can I suggest a strong start that he scraps the inflated white elephant that is HS2, saving the government tens of billions of pounds from a budget that is spiralling out of control?
Prime Minister.
I thank my right honourable friend. In case you missed what else I said, we're cutting taxes, Mr. Speaker, for everybody who pays national insurance contributions by an average of £330, Mr. Speaker, just next month. And as for HS2, actually what it will do is deliver long-term growth and prosperity for the whole of the country, uniting and levelling up, deliver more revenues, and put us in a better position to cut taxes in the future.
Colin Eastworth.
Speaker, today we hear reports that the Prime Minister refused to consult the First Treasury Council on his plans to rip up the protocol. Now, I know this question might be a bit redundant, given he might not be around very much longer. But given the Prime Minister's casual record of casual law breaking, will he give a commitment to the people of Northern Ireland that he will not break international law anytime soon?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I can tell him that the reports that he's seen this morning are not correct. And what I can also tell him is that the most important commitment that I think everybody in this House has made is to the balance and symmetry of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement. That is our highest legal international priority, and that is what we must deliver.
Dr. James Davis.
The North Wales Mainline Railway has seen little investment for over a century. In practice, this means that jobs at Manchester Airport are poorly accessible to many of my constituents with a 2-hour commute, whereas a similar journey in the southeast of the country would be just 45 minutes. So will my right honourable friend ensure that the North Wales line features within the updated rail network enhancements pipeline at the decision to develop stage?
Yes. I thank my honourable friend. Listen, I'm a great enthusiast, Mr. Speaker, for this project. We are looking at it, and I can tell him that the Network Rail has received funding to carry out feasibility work on improving North Wales mainline journey times, and travellers in North Wales could have no more effective advocate than my honourable friend.
Kim Ledbeater.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Despite the Prime Minister's promises of new hospitals and more doctors and nurses, the Bronte Birth Centre at my local hospital in Batley and Spen is temporarily shut and is at risk of permanent closure due to staff shortages and lack of resources. The reality on the ground is that after 12 years of Conservative mismanagement, the NHS is broken. So can the Prime Minister explain to expectant parents in my constituency why, despite his promises, they are now forced to travel miles to give birth, and why his government voted against an effective long-term workforce plan for the NHS, proposed by his right honourable friend, the member for South West Surrey.
Prime Minister.
I thank her very much, and I will certainly look into what's the centre that she mentions in Batley and Spen. What I can tell her, though, is that across the country we are investing massively in staff. In premises, in technology, in diagnostic centres, and I'm afraid for the party opposite to carp and to criticise is frankly absurd, because they voted against the health and care levy that is putting billions into our NHS, and they need to sort out their position. Either they support it or they don't.
Hold on.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would my right honourable friend join me in complimenting Bradford on becoming the City of Culture in 2025? Could he also praise the team from Durham, who gave a fantastic representation of what County Durham had to offer? Bradford must really be extraordinary to have beaten us. In 2025, Durham will also celebrate the bicentennial of the Stockton to Darlington Passenger Railway, which will, of course, distract people from Bradford. I believe that my right honourable friend is the best person to lead on delivering levelling up for the North East. And to that end, can he encourage progress on the Furry Hill Station development, reinvigorate the Leamside line, and help deliver a great county deal for County Durham?
I thank my honourable friend, and he and I have campaigned on. I've been following his campaign on this for a long time, Mr. Speaker. I'm told that the Department of Transport is currently reviewing the business case for exactly what he has just requested. We're putting the funding in, Mr. Speaker, unlike anything the party opposite ever could have delivered.
Richard Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In Monday's confidence vote, the Prime Minister secured the support of just 2 out of Scotland's 59 MPs. That means out of the massed ranks of his Scottish Conservative colleagues, he got as much support as there are pandas in Edinburgh Zoo. The Prime Minister is an intelligent man. He must know that position's untenable. And if he's not going to do the decent thing and resign as the Prime Minister, surely it's past time he wrote a letter of resignation to himself to stand down as the Minister for the Union.
Prime Minister.
I thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I really redirect the honourable gentleman to what I said to the right honourable gentleman, my friend, the leader of the SNP, because I think the more they campaign in the current circumstances for breaking up our United Kingdom with all the strength and all the merits that it has, I think the more damage they do to their own case.
Thanks, Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Supporting adults with a variety of mental health challenges, learning disabilities, and conditions such as dementia. Last week, the Prince's Centre in Prince's Risborough in my constituency celebrated 10 years as an independent daycare provider. From my recent visit, it is quite clear what a happy, welcoming and supportive atmosphere has been created for all service users. So will my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, join me in thanking and congratulating the manager, Kim Challoner, her whole team of staff, volunteers and trustees for delivering this first-class service? And as Chequers is but a hop, skip and a jump from Prince's Risborough, will he deliver those congratulations in person?
Prime Minister.
Well, I thank my honourable friend, who's amongst his many other distinctions, I think my MP. I also join him in thanking the entire team at the Prince's Centre for everything that they do, and I will certainly keep his kind invitation in mind.
Absolutely.
Mr. Speaker, I'd have more sympathy for the words "get on with the job" if it actually started in the first place. 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, the Prime Minister told the House, to the best of my knowledge, everybody is getting their passport within 4 to 6 weeks. However, the Passport Office is currently quoting a 10-week service time, with many of my constituents waiting well over that period. Cancelled summer trips could cost families over £1 billion. Does the Prime Minister accept that the Passport Office backlog is placing additional pressure on families already struggling with the cost of living crisis.
Actually, Mr. Speaker, what we're doing is 91% are getting their passport within 6 weeks, I can tell him, Mr. Speaker. And we are putting hundreds and hundreds more staff into the passport office. And the strength of demand, by the way, is a sign of the robustness of the economy, because everybody is frankly wanting to go on holiday, and quite right too, Mr. Speaker. But when it comes to travel chaos, have we heard any condemnation yet from the opposition, from the RMT and their reckless and wanton strike? What about that?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As my right honourable friend knows, Rothesay Strood is facing unrealistic housing targets, putting pressure on the council to bring forward a local plan that will close successful working docks and the loss of beloved open spaces such as Deangate Ridge, all in the name of meeting an arbitrary target. Can my right honourable friend assure my constituents who are facing this level of overdevelopment that there will be greater flexibility on housing numbers, so that the council can produce a local plan that delivers the appropriate housing but protects important sites like these?
Prime Minister. I thank my honourable friend, and she speaks, I know, for colleagues up and down the country. We want to make sure that councils are able to build in the right place and sensitively to local needs, and that is what we insist on. But I just want to make it one thing absolutely clear. Part of the merit, genius of levelling up, Mr. Speaker, is that it will encourage us to take some of the pressure, some of the heat out of the southeast of England, which has been overburdened for decades, and we can do it.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My constituent Mark is trying to sponsor 2 sisters from Ukraine to come to the UK. These 2 sisters were housed in dangerous temporary accommodation in Montenegro for several weeks, while the UK Home Office refused to process the application of the youngest sister because she's 13 and traveling without her parents, even though she had her 18-year-old sister with her. The 18-year-old sister is now in London, and the 13-year-old sister has been sent back to her hometown in Ukraine, which is under siege. Can I ask the Prime Minister, can he tell me, hand on heart, does he think sending vulnerable children back to a war zone is the right policy?
Prime Minister. Well, Mr. Speaker, of course I understand her indignation about the case that she mentions, and I know that my right honourable friend, the Home Secretary, will be looking into it. But I have to say, I do think the record of this country in processing so far, I think well over 120,000 visas for Ukrainians is very creditable. I thank all the staff who've been involved in that effort.
Mr. Speaker, my right honourable friend will remember that in March I asked him about increased research funding for aortic dissection as called for by the Aortic Dissection Charitable Trust. Will the Prime Minister update me on the progress with this? Will he also recognise the immense value of the patient awareness videos that have been produced by TADCT, featuring Whispering Bob Harris, survivors, relatives of patients, to help those going through this awful condition for the first time?
Prime Minister.
Well, I thank my honourable friend for her fantastic work on this, and I know the personal circumstances that give her understanding of this campaign. I can tell her that the National Institute for Health Research is looking at what more we can do to support research on aortic dissection. I know that she's meeting my right honourable friend, the Health Secretary, shortly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Ukrainian Freedom Orchestra and the Kyiv Symphony Orchestra are due to visit the UK this summer to perform at the BBC Proms, the Edinburgh Festival and other venues. But while other European countries are waiving their visas, to get to the UK, the musicians are facing both visa delays and prohibitive visa costs of £18,000 and £10,000 respectively. We should be doing all we can to support these Ukrainian musicians. So will the Prime Minister match our European neighbours and enable these Ukrainian artists to tour to the UK this year by expediting their visa applications and waiving the visa fees?
I think she needs to bring the particular case to my right honourable friend. But I can tell the House what they know. And I know that many honourable members, by the way, are showing a lead by having Ukrainians to stay in their own homes. I thank all honourable members for doing it, thanks to the scheme that the UK government has put in place. I think we should be very proud of what we're doing.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister knows from his visits to Redcar and Cleveland that we enjoy miles of beautiful, uninterrupted coastline. However, since October last year, we've seen thousands of dead and dying crustaceans wash ashore. DEFRA conducted an investigation into this, which led to the theory of algal bloom being the primary cause for these deaths. However, this report does nothing to support the fishermen left devastated by this freak event through no fault of their own. Will the Prime Minister look at how he can support this vital industry to get them back on their feet?
Minister. I know my honourable friend and I were walking together on the seafront in Redcar when eating a lemon top, actually, Mr. Speaker, when somebody raised this very point with us, and I can tell him that we've ruled out chemical pollution, Mr. Speaker, but we are looking at we are making another £100 million of investment, including in communities such as his, and working with the fishing industry to help them recover from this problem.
Final question, Kenny McCaskill.
The poorest in this country currently pay the highest fuel costs through prepayment meters that have higher standing charges and higher tariffs. Belgium ensures a social tariff for the poorest and most vulnerable. As the perverse and pernicious euphemism of self-disconnection enters the lexicon, when in fact it's a politically imposed choice, not something chosen by individuals. Is it not time that we provided a social tariff and ended the injustice of prepayment meters?
Prime Minister.
I thank him, Mr. Speaker, and I can tell him that what we're doing in the immediate, what we're doing right now, is helping 8 million families, 8 million households across the country with £1,200 of support, an extra £300 for pensioners who are in receipt of the cold weather payment, plus £400, Mr. Speaker, for every household in the country. And that is the support that we're giving right now to help people with the cost of energy. And the only reason we can do it, as I've said before to the House, is because of the strength of the economy and because of the brave, tough calls that we got right during the pandemic.
Right, that we know. I think the honourable member's been here long enough to know it comes after statements. We don't need to tell him the rules of the House. Right. Thank you.